Texas women's basketball advances to the second round of the NCAA tournament. Texas men's basketball gets knocked out in the first round, and Texas volleyball is no longer undefeated. All this and more coming up on College Crossfire.
Yeah, let's do this.
And their men's basketball team needs to stop social distancing themselves from fans.
But now it has been overdone to death. Playing, don't stop believing.
Bye-bye, Bucks. Bye-bye, Raptors.
All right, let's get to it. Welcome into College Crossfire. I'm your host, Jaxie Pigeon, and it looks like tonight's show is going to be a great one. Let's start out by introducing tonight's panel. On first base, we have Jake all the way in Maryland right now. How are you, Jake?
I'm doing well, Jaxie. Great to be on the show all the way from home, and looking forward to talking about some of the March Madness, some of the March Sadness that's made it all the way across the country to me tonight.
Absolutely. Lots and lots of hoops. And then on second base, we have Clark Dalton returning this semester. How are you, Clark?
I'm pumped. Let's go. It is time to go out there and talk some March Madness, not only for basketball, but for volleyball as well. It's going to be a great show.
Lots and lots of madness, not just basketball. And on third base, we have our reigning back-to-back champion. First time since 2019 since that's happened. How are you, Sydney?
I'm doing great. You said it. Ready to go for 3 in a row. Super excited.
Record-breaking times. All right, before we get started, I'm going to award some panelists extra points. First up, Sydney, you're starting off with an extra point because of your stellar background. Go Mavs, hallelujah. And Clark, you're going to get an extra point because of your video that was shared on social media. Loved the form on the basketball there. All right, let's get to it. This past Saturday, Texas men's basketball had their first round matchup in the NCAA tournament against the Southland Conference champions, the Abilene Christian University Wildcats. Number 3, Texas was the heavy favorite, especially after taking home the Big 12 championship title. But as March shows us, there's always madness. In what was arguably the Longhorns' worst showing of the year, they recorded a season-low 52 points and a season-high 23 turnovers. The game ended with ACU's Joe Pleasant saving the day, knocking down both of his free throws with 1.8 seconds remaining. His free throws and steal from Cunningham's last-minute lob gave ACU the 53-52 win over the Horns. So, what was the biggest factor leading to Texas's loss against Abilene Christian? Jake, start us off.
Well, Jaxie, sadly for Texas, they ended up losing this game because they just got outworked. If you look at the box score of this game, it's really one of a kind because you have a situation where Texas took 27 less shots than Abilene Christian, and that is a product of a poor effort on the glass. Texas gave up 18 offensive rebounds. This is a failure of not just the Texas big men, not just the coaching, but just the whole team on an individual level did not commit to rebounding. And when you give up a pivotal offensive rebound late in the game, you leave it up to chance on the referees to make a ticky-tack call, and before you know it, you get sent packing. Abilene Christian wanted it more, and it showed on the glass and in the turnover battle, Jaxie.
Sure. And like you said, waiting till the last minute makes it harder to get those things done when you should be working out earlier in the game. Clark, what do you think?
I think it was a matter of overconfidence heading into this game. Texas was excited since they won the Big 12 tournament title for the first time ever. And I think they started looking ahead a little bit, looking ahead to the Sweet 16, looking ahead to the Elite 8, maybe even the Final Four. And they forgot to focus on the present moment against Abilene Christian. And you have to give Abilene Christian a lot of credit because they came out with an extremely high intensity level that eclipsed Texas. And it showed at the end of the game. Texas just didn't respond to their physicality all that well. And the Wildcats kept pressing the issue throughout the game. And they sort of can just push them down to the floor. And that's what allowed them to escape with the victory.
Yeah, that's a very fair point there. I think, like you said, they came off this high, from the Big 12 championship title there, and then a little overconfident. All right, Sydney, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, what a disappointing ending for the Longhorns. I'm going to echo Clark with what he said. I was really excited to watch this team compete in the tournament, and I think the biggest factor in the game was just that they didn't compete. In the end, I think the worst thing that happened to the Texas men's basketball team was winning the Big 12 tournament. It was such an exciting achievement, I think that they really lost that drive and mentality that teams need when they go into the the NCAA tournament. And it came back to bite them. The ball security on offense was non-existent. And with Abilene Christian's defense, being as scrappy and well-conditioned as they were, the Wildcats didn't even have to play very well to beat us. And this tournament's so tough when you play against a low-seeded team because they have absolutely nothing to lose. And unfortunately for Texas, they had so much on the line and they couldn't pull through. And by the way, at the end, that call totally was a foul. Whether you're going to call that, in a normal game or not, completely a foul. That's on Texas 100%.
Yes, like Jake kind of pointed out, that last minute, kind of waiting till that long, it was a foul. Ref had to be looking for it, but it definitely was one. But on this one, I'm going to have to go with Jake. I think that the glass effort was very minimal here, and it showed. But yeah, so Jake, you're going to get 3, Clark 2, Sydney 1. Next up, with this unexpected and upsetting loss to Abilene Christian, the conversation surrounding whether or not Shaka Smart is on the hot seat has returned. As a 6-year head coach at Texas, he finally led the Longhorns to their first ever Big 12 tournament title. The regular season went pretty well, and it seemed as if Smart had redeemed himself. But it was truly this upset loss to ACU that stuck with Texas fans and led to serious discussion on whether he is the right man for the job and why Texas couldn't execute this win. Now, Texas is 0-3 in the NCAA tournament under Coach Smart. So, how hot is Shaka Smart's hot seat, and how much blame does he deserve for this loss to ACU? Clark, start us off.
Well, it cooled down a little bit after the Big 12 tournament, but I think it is boiling again after this loss just because he doesn't even have a win in the first round during his tenure at Texas. They lost to Northern Iowa on that freak half-court buzzer beater. They lost to Nevada when they had no Mo Bamba. And now you have this loss against Abilene Christian, who everybody thought would get blown out by Texas. And it's not a good look for Shaka. But that being said, I can't place all the blame on him in this loss because Texas wasn't aggressive enough in the game. When you watch their offense, they swung the ball around way too much and way too long, and then they would get deep in the shot clock, and that's when they would have to force the issue offensively, and that's when you see a bad shot or possibly even a turnover. And the offensive rebounding battle, again, I can't emphasize how crucial that was. Abilene Christian had 18 offensive rebounds while Texas only had 5. And with players like Jericho Sims, Brock Cunningham, and Kai Jones, that can't happen. And everybody has talked about the last play of the game a lot, but what was it that led to the foul? It was an offensive rebound. And without that offensive rebound, Abilene Christian doesn't have an opportunity to win that game. So it's those little things that cost Texas at the end of the day. And that's not really a game planning thing. That's kind of, that little bit of hustle we talk about. And it's that hustle that allows teams that aren't as talented like Abilene Christian to pull off upsets against Goliaths.
Sure. The little things that lead up to the big moments in the end there. Like you said, everyone's focusing on this very single-minded last-minute shot by Joe Pleasant, but it came before that. Sydney, what do you think?
Truthfully, I think that Shaka Smart is still going to be the coach of Texas men's basketball next year. Matt Coleman even defended Smart after the game, saying he built a culture here. It's not him. I failed him. And I think hearing those words from the leader of this team has to mean something. And I really do believe that it just wasn't their night. And even if Smart and his staff had the best scouting report out there, I don't know if that could have made up for how poorly they handled the ball and how well ACU's defense played against us. Next season, the Longhorns will be faced with a significantly reduced talent pool. And I think that Texas Athletic Director Chris Del Conte, who, by the way, I think is maybe in the hot seat too, I think he'll use next season as the final test for Smart. Can he develop younger players to fill in the gaps of their roster? And also, can he maintain a winning philosophy, arguably kind of in jeopardy right now, with those inexperienced players after coming off a year, when you lose the most talented team in Texas. So I think it's hot, but I still think he's going to be the coach next year. Maybe the year after that, his last year of his contract might be a different story, but I think definitely next year he's still the coach.
All right. Sydney thinks he's staying at least for another year. Jake, what about you?
Yeah, first I'm going to agree with Sydney. I think that her outlook is spot on when it comes to Shaka Smart's immediate future at Texas. I don't think he's in any danger of losing his job before the next season begins. I'm also going to second the point that Matt Coleman just had an off night. It was inexplicable. He picked up 2 fouls really early, never quite got into the flow of the game, ended up turning the ball over 7 times, and that is just not Shaka Smart's fault. But where I am going to push back is against Clark's point. As a coach, you have to get your team up for any game, especially an NCAA tournament game, especially a game against a hungry in-state school that wants their shot to beat you, and especially on the biggest stage where Shaka Smart has not led Texas to a win just yet. And so where my concern is coming in is A, the poor effort level that Clark talked about, but B, the fact that Coach Smart could not get his team up for that game and in-game could not make the adjustments and push the right buttons to get the team to play the way it needed to. And it's really a shame because I think Shaka Smart did have a phenomenal season when it came to coaching this year's team. I think it was some of his best work, and I think he was excellent as a coach this season, just not in that one, not on Saturday night. It was not his best game.
Sure. And I mean, any team you can't play your best every single game, and that's going to happen. But like you said, Jake, it's one of those things where even if you are playing bad, you still have to figure out a way to execute. And that's, partly a coaching job there. Also, you have to have your players be able to do it too. But I mean, for him to not be able to pull that off was kind of upsetting. Not kind of upsetting. It was upsetting. But I'm going to have to give Jake the 3 on this one. Sydney 2 and Clark 1. And next to women's basketball, this past Monday, the 6th-seeded Texas women's basketball team took on the 11th-seeded Bradley University in the first round of the NCAA tournament. The Longhorns started to catch fire with their 13-0 run, which had them leading 19-7 after the first quarter. Around the 4-minute mark in the first, Bradley had their first and only lead of the game at 7-6, and that's when that 13-0 run came in handy. Texas's game leaders were Charlie Collier, of course, with 23 points and 15 rebounds, Audrey Warren with 19 points and 7 rebounds, and Joanne Allen Taylor with 12 points and 4 rebounds. The Longhorns are taking on the UCLA Bruins as we speak in the second round. But what was the key to victory against Bradley for Texas women's basketball? Sydney, start us off.
Yeah, another lights out performance, of course, by Charlie Collier, adding yet another double-double to her resume. But what I was really encouraged to see was they didn't totally depend on her to win this game. With 4 players in the double digits, I thought they took some of the offensive burden off of Collier. And this will be key, to their hopeful success farther into the tournament because honestly, every team has number 35, Charlie Collier, circled on their scouting report for UT. With such a dominant force like her, opponents have to plan their entire game plan, around how to stop her. And with guards playing really well and not turning the ball over much, this creates complications for the other team because, of course, you only get 5 people on the court and usually takes more than one person to defend Collier. So I really hope that the other starters are creating meaningful offensive looks so that they're able to have a multifaceted attack like they did against Bradley and don't completely rely on Collier.
Yeah, it's definitely a good point there. Is Charlie Collier, combine the name there. It's a new name, Collier. Basically, like you said, she takes more than one to guard her there. And when teams are putting all the pressure on Collier, it leaves the other people open, but they also need to execute, which they did in that game. Jake, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you sort of hit it on the nose that they were able to execute this game to their style. They were able to get up and down the court, cause some disruptions with their full court pressure, which is just such a great part of this team's identity. Collier's leadership was sturdy as could be, and the rest of the team was able to chip in with some timely threes early on in the ball game. And when you're facing an underdog like Bradley, you take out that belief early and you're able to dictate the tempo of the game from there. I was really impressed with their performance. I thought they started really well, and they've started really well again tonight against UCLA, which is a very encouraging sign for Vic Schaefer's bunch.
Yes, and like you said, I mean, for the first couple minutes, it was not so hot in this game, but once they got on that run, it was kind of all gas, no brakes, if you will. Clark, what do you think?
We're already using football references, but I love Charlie Collier, and this is one of her finest moments in a game because there was a moment where she took things personally. It was when she was at the foul line and she was on her second free throw, and a fan started to chant "overrated." Charlie could have easily not handled it well emotionally, but she handled it like a pro. Here's what she did. She sunk the free throw. It was a swish, by the way. And she immediately sprinted back down the floor as fast as she could. And she didn't just block that shot. She destroyed the shot that like the Bradley guard drove in and swatted it. And that was a really important moment in the game because it kind of sets the tone for this Texas team. And I think her teammates are starting to feed off of it. This is her saying, hey, this is what we're here to do. We're here to prove that we're one of the best teams in the country, and you're going to ride my back and do this. And that's something that not just good players do, great transcendent players do. They have that ability to take all of those raw emotions, anger, frustration, whatever it may be, and channel it into an excellent performance that entails 23 points and 15 rebounds, as well as that strong leadership she always has.
Yeah, she's definitely a great leader for this team. And I think, like you said, how she reacts to certain things impacts the entire team. That specific moment was a little later in the game, so I'm not sure that was the sole reason that, the key to victory during that time. So I'm going to have to give the 3 to Sydney, Jake 2, and Clark 1. When we come back, the panel discusses Texas volleyball and the NBA trade deadline. You won't want to miss it.
Men's basketball looks for a key win against Iowa State. Women's basketball is tested against the number 2 team in the nation.
The Longhorns had a dominant pitching performance in the latter half of the game, led by Pete Hansen.
I get to say some of the most exciting words in football. The Cincinnati Bengals are on the clock. And picking for
Texas started the third with the lead and continued to gain momentum on defense.
Hello and welcome into the first social distancing college press box ever.
You're watching a live sports presentation of Texas Student Television.
It's a lovely evening in Austin. Texas Longhorns, Texas A&M Aggies.
This is a rivalry game, high intensity, high scoring.
Puck drop, we're off.
Both of these teams are very fast.
Big collision on the wall there. Now a little advantage for Texas. Shot in the middle.
Welcome back to College Crossfire. Let's take a look at the scoreboard. Leading the show, we have Jake with 8 points. In second, we have Sydney with 7 points. And in third, we have Clark with 5 points. All right, let's jump right back in. Texas baseball has found their way back into the top 10. After their first series sweep of the season over South Carolina, the then number 19 Longhorns moved up 9 spots and were moved to number 10. Following that series, they went on to grab a 15-2 win over UT Rio Grande Valley and then won 2 out of the 3 games against Baylor and Waco, giving them their first Big 12 wins of the season. And that brings us to yesterday's matchup against the University of the Incarnate Word, where Texas moved up 1 more spot to number 9, and they came out victoriously, winning 10-1. Texas baseball started out the season at number 9, quickly jumped to 19, then back to 10, and now finally back to where they started at number 9. So, do you think Texas deserves to be back in the top 10? Jake, what do you think?
I think so. I think given the body of work that we've seen from this Texas team ever since they hit that bump in the road at the beginning of the season, taking on those tough SEC opponents at Minute Maid Park, they've really improved. And I think the improvement has come throughout the entire team. They're getting much better production from the bottom of their order. Their pitching staff has been a lot more consistent, and they're starting to really run up the score and get some pitching innings for some younger guys against some of these midweek opponents. So I think Texas baseball is absolutely heading in the right direction. If it was a power ranking and not an AP poll, maybe they'd be higher than the top 10, but I think right where they are is about right.
Sure. I mean, like Mr. Sun in the intro, I mean, these games that they've kind of taken more control than they did at the beginning, they kind of started out slow, but are trying to pick up the pace now. Clark, what do you think?
I think it's an emphatic yes. They absolutely deserve to be back in the top 10. Let's look at their margin of victory against South Carolina. It wasn't just a nail-biter 1-1 game. It was usually 8-5, 3-0, 4-1, and then you have that excellent victory against UT Rio Grande Valley that's 15-2. And let's contrast that to the beginning of the season. The first 3 opponents that Texas faced, and a main reason they had that 0-3 start, was Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and Arkansas. Those are the 3 best teams in the country. And then not only but getting embarrassed was one of the best things that could have happened, because it showed them, hey, this is the level that's going to be required if you want to make it to the College World Series. And since then, they've responded excellently. They've been 14-3 Ty Madden has found a brand new level this season. He threw 14 strikeouts against Houston. That was a career high. Cam Williams and Ivan Melendez are beginning to find their swing. That's inspiring confidence in the offense. So we knew this team had talent heading into the season, but now you gain a little extra maturity, and I think it's going to continue tenfold, and that's why they're progressing so quickly. They're going to be a top 10 team and one of the best in the Big 12.
Sure, maturity, and they had this opportunity to kind of work out their kinks. Luckily, they kind of had that lack at the beginning of the season, so they knew where they had to improve. Sydney, what do you think?
Yeah, same as what they have to say. They've won every series since they started the season 0-3, including 9 wins in the last 10 games, in which they've averaged over 7 runs per game. So the initial concerns at the plate for the Longhorns are obviously being addressed. As usual, kind of like Clark said, redshirt sophomore Ty Madden continues to show why he's projected as a potential first-round pick, allowing an astonishing 125 opponent batting average, as well as being top 10 in the country in strikeouts at 44. So obviously, though, Madden can't be at the mound at all times, and it's been great to see some of the relievers get it done for Texas. Nixon, the right-handed freshman, came in late against Baylor and was able to get the win. So I think they've earned their right for a spot in the top 10, and I bet they're looking forward to their next game against OU.
Yes, for sure. Then another Big 12 matchup for them. But yeah, I think they do deserve this ranking. I think they've worked their way back up, like we said. But Clark, I loved your points about, just kind of this sense of camaraderie that they have and like the right pieces at the right time that are finally coming together for them. And it's showing, like you said, with players like Cam Williams and like Ty Madden too. It's just all into the game they're having covered now. So Clark, you're gonna get the points on that one. Next up, sadly, all good things have to come to an end at some point, and that happened to be Texas volleyball's case as they dropped their first match of the season to the Rice Owls yesterday. The Longhorns were a flawless 20-0 on the season, but a hungry Rice roster came to play and went home, upsetting the then undefeated Horns. The game went into 5 matches with Texas and Rice exchanging sets. Texas won the first and fourth matches 25-10 and 25-14 respectively, and Rice took the second, third, and final matches 25-16, 25-23, and 15-13, giving them the match win. With Texas dropping their first match of the year to an unranked opponent, do you think this loss will impact the team going into the rest of the regular season and the NCAA tournament? Clark, start us off.
They're going to be fine. They definitely have some lessons to learn from this match. They did have 13 service errors, but that'll happen sometimes. And it's kind of weird because the last 2 times Texas has played Rice, they lost. They lost in 2019 and they lost again. And I think it's just a matter of them playing so many matches against so many tough opponents and having a long hiatus between fall semester and spring semester that it's kind of hard to keep up an undefeated streak, especially, and just keep preparing with the same intensity level every day. So eventually you're bound for a hiccup. But this is one of the most talented teams in the country, and it's not like they played that badly. Jenna Gabriel had 43 assists. Breon Butler nearly had a double-double. So the pieces are still there, and it's clear just a few little mechanics, you tweak them a little bit, and they'll get right back on track and beat Baylor this weekend.
All right, Clark has them still good. They're chilling. All right, Sydney, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm gonna say it's not really gonna affect their rest of their season. Prior to this game, like you said, the Longhorns had been playing lights out, 20-0, and they even played really well in the first set of this game. Just serving errors that really hurt them. And overall, I think Rice was really hungry. Like Clark said, they beat him the time before, as well as they a couple days ago took a beating against Baylor. So in all honesty, I think they were just looking for a fight against Texas. And honestly, though, I'm always very weary of undefeated teams going into the NCAA tournament because the narrative is always surrounding the 0 losses. And that pressure can distract teams so much because not only do they need to win the game, obviously, but they also need to maintain that perfect record. So I actually do like for a team to have a couple losses here and there going into the real test of the NCAA tournament. But now if the Longhorns have a game coming up against number 6 ranked Baylor, and if they drop those games, then it will be a different story. But I'd look to make a statement with those games coming up against Baylor, and I still think the Longhorns are going to be, one of the favorites going into the tournament for sure.
So you have this loss gives them a little bit of wiggle room, less pressure. Okay, Jake, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm with Sydney here. Sometimes being undefeated can carry that pressure. And not only does the loss, alleviate that, it also gives them time, given the time of the season where the loss came. It gives them time to go into that NCAA tournament with the right kind of momentum because they have time to get it back against Baylor and the other opponents coming up on their schedule. I think they played it was a very weird match. It felt like Texas played very well. They completely dominated the 2 sets that they won. And then it's just little tweaks, small service errors, and a couple of close plays that determine the match's outcome. And, it's a tough loss to swallow, but I think that it's not going to sink their ship. There's no reason to hit the panic button on Texas volleyball.
No panic button needed. That's a good point there too. And I think the service errors, it's like volleyball's free throw in basketball. It's like you can't mess those up. Those are your time to shine. And 13 of them in a match is a lot for that team, especially. But I'm going to have to go with Sydney on this one. I think you made a great point about how there's a lot of pressure surrounding, being perfect. And this might even help them more than hurt them. So Sydney, you're going to get the points on that one. And next up, tomorrow at 2 p.m. Central Time marks the end of the official trade deadline of the NBA. By that deadline, all trades must be completed and submitted to the league office. Even with less than 24 hours remaining before the deadline, rumors are circling around as teams are looking to perfect their rosters and fill in their needed gaps. Teams can also trade away players for future draft picks during this time. The Brooklyn Nets got trades rolling in January when they got James Harden from the Houston Rockets. There hasn't been as many big names talked about this year, but there's still a little time. That being said, what is an NBA trade you would like to see happen before the deadline? Sydney, start us off.
I'm going to go with one that hasn't really been talked about that much, and that's Kenrich Williams from the Oklahoma City Thunder. His field goal percentage is up from last season. His three-point percentage is up from last season, and I think he's had a really great year for OKC. He's shown improvement even from the beginning of the season to now. In January, he was only averaging 3.6 points per game, and he's improved that stat to nearly 11 points per game in the month of March alone. And I can see him being a really great asset coming off the bench for a team that's looking to make a playoff push and looking for that final piece in their rotation to get them into playoff form. And as far as William goes, his ball handling is great. He's tough on the boards, great defender. As well as having a really high basketball IQ. And, that alone, of course, doesn't necessarily set him apart. But what's really key is he's had a relatively small contract for what I think he's worth. He's only getting paid about $2 million a year. And with 2 more years on his contract, a team that's struggling with some cap space could add him for cheap and get a good return. Plus, none of it's guaranteed. So if he gets hurt, they can cut their losses and move on. So I'm looking for a bubble playoff team to elevate their roster and add him before the deadline.
Very good points there. And I like how you said the IQ of the game is not just the stats, just kind of his knowledge deeper than that. Jake, what do you think?
Well, one team that I've had my eye on during this trade deadline that's been a little quiet so far, a little too quiet, is the Toronto Raptors, team that won the NBA Finals a couple of years ago. Now, all of a sudden, they're in a position where they're positioning themselves as sellers coming into this trade deadline. And one piece on their team that could be on the move is Norman Powell. He's a very versatile scorer, very physically gifted, really efficient on offense, can help a team in a lot of different ways. And he's not too expensive. He's not tied down to too much of a long-term deal at the moment. So one destination I could see Powell ending up is with the Brooklyn Nets. Now, I've been extremely skeptical of the Nets throughout the season. I well publicized, picked the Lakers on the show, was skeptical of what the Nets were doing. But now all of a sudden, the Lakers are dealing with injuries. It could be the Brooklyn Nets year to try and push some chips in, and Norman Powell could be the missing piece. So maybe they could send Spencer Dinwiddie back over to the Raptors, and Dinwiddie can get his minutes, get his payday, and Powell can shine as a role player on an NBA Finals team, just like he did 2 years ago in Toronto.
Like you said, not too expensive, but would be impactful on another roster. Clark, what do you think?
This is a bit of a gamble here, but bear with me for a second. I think the Dallas Mavericks should make a move, and I think they should go for Aaron Gordon. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen, but the reason I think it could be a good move is let's remember the last time the Mavericks won a championship. They had Dirk Nowitzki, and there was another guy who was really key on that team. It was Tyson Chandler. He was blocking shots. He was a great interior presence, and he was just a general intimidator. The Mavericks kind of have similar ingredients right now. We know Luka Doncic is an MVP candidate for years to come, Kristaps Porzingis can shoot anywhere on the floor, but right now we know the Mavs need to work on their defense a little bit and get a little bit tougher inside so they can hang with teams like the Lakers, like the Clippers, and like the Jazz. And I think Aaron Gordon would work because we know, look, Kristaps Porzingis has had a couple of ACL tears now at this point in his career, and he can't bang around in the post like he used to. Aaron Gordon is a bruising power forward, and that's kind of the culture change the Mavs need right now. And I think if you get Doncic and Porzingis, they can also help Gordon improve his jump shot, which is something he's been trying to do throughout his career. So if the Mavs risk it and they follow all these steps, I think it could be a good move for them competing in the West.
Sure. I mean, like you said, kind of like at the Collier situation, you got to take a little bit of pressure off your guys that you're relying on a lot. But Clark, I like your Aaron Gordon pick. I think that it could be very beneficial for the Mavs. So you're going to get the points on that one. And coming up next, it's rapid fire here on College Crossfire. You won't want to miss it.
Sports Show,
the premier sports talk show on the 40 acres. We're back.
Welcome back to College Crossfire for the final time tonight. It's time for rapid fire. In this round, points are worth double, and that means it's still anybody's game. And in this case, I'm going to show you that because we're going to look at the scoreboard. In a tie for first place, we have Jake and Sydney with 8 points, and right behind them, we have Clark with 7 points. Let's get to it. During Texas women's basketball most recent game against Bradley, as Clark mentioned, Charlie Collier showed out having 23 points and 15 rebounds. As Texas had the 69-55 fourth quarter lead, Collier went to the free throw line. All of a sudden, fans began chanting overrated at Collier. All disrespect aside, instead of getting mad, Collier got even. She swished her free throw and then sprinted down the court quick enough to stuff Bradley's Tatum Koenig. Let's just say the chant was proven to be incorrect. If you were in Collier's shoes, how would you redeem yourself after an overrated chant from the audience? Anybody can jump in.
I'd ask the fan to come up right out on the floor and show them if they can do any better. I want to see Charlie Collier going up on that dude, hitting turnaround jumpers, blocking his shot. That was just disrespectful. This is a #1 WNBA pick. This is going to be a great player for a long time, and I would love to see that so she could show him.
Show him. All right, Clark.
I don't know if Charlie Collier can dunk, but man, if there ever was a time to bring a dunk out just in the middle of a game, that was it. Like, totally just a tomahawk over the head dunk like that would just I would seal the deal right there.
All right, Jake.
You know, I don't know if Collier should stoop to the level of those hecklers. I think instead she should raise her game up even higher. Next time she swats the shot, swat it out into the stands, right into the lap of the fans, spill the popcorn, get them on the not top 10, and get herself on the top 10.
Yeah, I mean, that's right into them. But I feel like there was a lot more than one, so we'd have to do like a take out the whole section kind of thing. But I think I like Sydney's on this one. I think a nice two-handed slam right in their face would be cool, especially because those are a little rare. We haven't seen one from Collier yet, so it'd be more fun. So Sydney, you're gonna get the points on that one. Next up, even though March is almost over, March Madness continues into early April. This year's women's tournament is taking place in San Antonio, Texas, where the Final Four will take place at the Alamo Dome. On the men's side, they are competing in Indianapolis, Indiana, where their Final Four will take place at Lucas Oil Stadium. Typically, sites are selected by the NCAA committee and approved by championship committees. But if you were in charge, where would you host a March Madness tournament?
I think the front runner for me would be the new Rams and Chargers SoFi Stadium. Dude, that is like the coolest setup stadium I ever, like the structure, it's amazing. It's a beautiful stadium, state of the art video boards. I feel like that would be an amazing atmosphere, especially being out in LA. It would just be awesome.
All right, the vibes. Okay. Who's next?
So you want to get fans in the stands, and you want to introduce a new stadium into relevance. How about Q2 Stadium in North Austin? Open up Austin FC's home in a signature way. And who knows, maybe Texas makes a little run and finds itself playing in front of a friendly home crowd. Outdoors, more fans.
A local legend. Okay. Clark, what do you think?
Well, my answer is kind of out of this world, and it's not scientifically possible at all, according to my dad. Because like the physics of it, you got to worry about it. But could we just have one on Mars? That'd be kind of cool, just like the orange background and stuff. And then I think the gravity is slightly different there, so players could jump higher. That would be really cool. You can make the stadium even bigger. That is the only place I can think of, because we've hosted the NCAA tournament everywhere. Why not go out of this world and try something that's never been done before? Let's go to Mars just for the NCAA tournament.
Clark, I really like the thought process here. I really do. But I think I'm gonna have to stick with the local legend situation here. I think especially we need some Texas luck, and maybe having in the home city would help out with that. But also that stadium and the outdoors side too. That would be interesting. Little pickup game instead. I like it. All right, Jake, you're gonna get the points on that one. And our final question of the night, another question in honor of March Madness. The March Madness brackets, we couldn't leave out the most fun brackets, the mascot bracket challenge, aka bracket zoology. We all know that our beloved Bevo wins any competition he's a part of. He's perfect in every way, and there isn't another mascot that could make me feel any different. Don't even try. He is the full package, but in light of the numerous other teams competing in the big dance on the men's and women's side, aside from Bevo, which team in the NCAA tournament has the best mascot?
I'm going to go a little unconventional here, and I'm going to say the Stanford tree. Like, I don't know why, but that thing just like, it just gets me excited. Like, it's so unconventional. It's like, how can this just like pine tree pump you up? But seeing the leaves like jumping around, it's hilarious. It's my favorite.
Definitely a unique one. Who else?
Sister Jean for Loyola Chicago. Now, I know she's not technically the official mascot, but who knows what Loyola Chicago's nickname is? I know it's the Ramblers, but what's the Ramblers? Like someone who talks all the time like me. Sister Jean is the face of that program, and I have no doubt she's like working up there with like the faith. I'm not religious, so the faith and stuff, and that's why Loyola Chicago manages to beat number 1 seeds all the time around this time of year.
Clark wants to, change. He wants an official change, please. Request the university. All right, Jake, what do you have?
Yeah, Sister Jean's a pretty good pick. But I'm going to go the complete opposite end of the spectrum. There's nothing intimidating or mean at all about Sister Jean, but my pick for best mascot before the tournament, Purdue, was upstaged by the North Texas team, and I think I'm going to give it to them. How does it get better than the Mean Green? It's all engulfing. It's like the Mean Machine.
Yes, and you were even saying like fans in the stands. You're rhyming a lot tonight. You're like busting rhymes here. Home in Texas, lots of Texas answers from you tonight, but I'm gonna have to give it to you, Jake. I think Mean Green, a little bit of steam to it there. I rhyme with you. So you're gonna get the points and the win. Congratulations. That being said, it's time for FaceTime. Jake, take it away.
Thank you, Jaxie. Honored for the win. Thank you to the other panelists as well. Great show tonight. I guess the only message I have for those of you watching this show is, for those of you in March Sadness like I am, it's okay to root for upsets. I had Ohio State going to my championship game. My brackets were busted 2 hours into March Madness, and I see too many people crying over upsets. Root for the upsets, embrace the madness, and hook 'em horns tonight against UCLA.
Yes, horns up tonight. Well, congratulations, Jake, and thank you for tuning in to tonight's episode of College Crossfire. Don't forget to follow us on social media at TSTV Sports on Twitter and Instagram. Lastly, be sure to wake up with the 1-0 Sports Show Friday mornings at 10 a.m. From all of the panelists in our virtual studio and our virtual master control, I'm Jaxie Pigeon. Have a wonderful evening and hook 'em horns.